Hello, everyone. Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, here with you tonight, and I want to talk to you about ubiquinol. This is something that comes up quite frequently where people will hear the word CoQ10. And if you hear CoQ10, oftentimes you think of ubiquinone. But there's actually two different forms of coenzyme Q10. So this is really important to understand the difference and how it can be beneficial for your overall health. So when we look at coenzyme Q10, we know this is part of something that occurs within the human body. So it actually is part of the electron transport chain. So not that I'm going to get heavy into the science on that, but we know that coenzyme Q10 actually exists in the body and it functions as an antioxidant but also as a source for energy production, which is really key. But there is a difference between ubiquinone and ubiquinol. So, ubiquinone is the standard form, the unreduced form of coenzyme Q10. And then we have ubiquinol ending with OL. This is your antioxidant reduced form. This is the ideal form in which you want to supplement with because as we get older and we're trying to replenish things that are lost, we always want to go with things that we know are highly absorbable as well as going to really be utilized in the most efficient way in the body. So the form that we use is actually a registered trademark form known as Kanika. So we use Kanika QH. Now Kanika is one of the most widely studied coenzyme Q10 supplementation that is out there on the market. And there's a reason for it. Kanika's been around for a very long time, and they are definitely driven into the science of understanding how it is that CoQ10 is actually being utilized and facilitated throughout the human body. So we know from multiple clinical research trials at this point in time with coenzyme Q10 that you name the system in the body, coenzyme Q10 is playing a role into that. So we know that CoQ10 is not something that's made up by the supplement world. This is actually something that exists in the human body. And it wasn't until back in the 50s that they actually were able to discover this. And scientists actually won Nobel Peace Prize for doing such amazing work. And as they stumbled across this discovery, they're like, what is this, molecule and how is it actually working? And we're seeing it in an animal setting, but we wonder, is it also in humans? And there you have it. They found it. And we know one thing about coenzyme Q10. Areas of high energy output have a high demand for CoQ10. So we think of things like the heart and the brain. We know that both of those areas require a lot of energy output. And we know that CoQ10 is working via that electron transport chain. And this is how energy is actually made in the body, and it ends up in the form of ATP or adenosine triphosphate. So, with CoQ10 being part of that electron transport chain, it's working within the mitochondria, so the inside of the cell. You have the mitochondria, and that's where that energy is made. So we know that the mitochondria is extremely reliant on coenzyme Q10. So supplementing, we want to take the ubiquinol form to really get that really wonderful absorption. And we know that the form that we use, the Kanika QH, which is manufactured in Texas, so that is a wonderful thing as well, that this is one of the most widely studied forms of coenzyme Q10 across the spectrum. We look at cardiovascular disease. The Frontiers in Physiology journal actually just recently published a study looking at all of the wide scope in which coenzyme Q10 has been studied. And so we're talking cardiovascular, we're talking about diabetes and metabolic syndrome, inflammation. We know that coenzyme Q10 can play a really critical role in easing inflammation in the body. But we can also look at kidney disease, neurodegenerative disorders, as well as fertility. So this is also an interesting point of research for people who have low serum CoQ10 levels and are struggling with fertility. This is an area just to keep your eyes out for. Now, when I said low serum levels, what does that actually mean? Well, that means go get a blood test done. Have your CoQ10 level tested. It is always amazing to me how many people are on certain medications that we know can lower your CoQ10, such as the statin drugs and even beta blockers. So, if you are on these medications, We need to know that because you need to know how much of an impact is that actually making on your natural stores of coenzyme Q10, and it gives you an idea as to how much you should supplement with. Now, how much should someone supplement with? Well, it really kind of varies depending upon what your overall health concerns are. On average, usually around 100 milligrams of ubiquinol, keep that in mind, ubiquinol, not ubiquinone. So ubiquinol, 100 milligrams per day. Now, there's going to be variables to this. For some people, they may find that 200 is more ideal. For someone with significant cardiovascular or neurodegenerative disorders such as Parkinson's disease, then you may be looking at a much higher amount of ubiquinol. Because remember, we're talking about areas where high energy output is really critical. So if you have a disease in the heart or something that is affecting the central nervous system, we know we definitely want to be increasing the amount of ubiquinol for the body to be able to use. So this is why ubiquinol has been studied in the setting of Parkinson's disease, for example. Obviously, in congestive heart failure, this is a huge one. They have found that when they take cardiac patients, especially those who have congestive heart failure, and they look at their serum or their blood level of CoQ10 and they see it's really, really low, and then they start to give them coenzyme Q10, they see a huge difference in terms of their overall sense of well being, as well as multiple cardiac markers. So, markers for inflammation. So, we can look at things like C reactive protein, for example. So, this is really very key to understanding what exactly CoQ10 ubiquinol actually is. There was another study, and there's so many studies. I could sit here for hours and hours, probably days, and just go through all of the numerous studies on coenzyme Q10, which for the most part in the original research, they were looking mainly at cardiovascular based studies. And then they started to spin off into all of these other organ systems and then disease specific. So, really, just a ton of research out there. But there was a study that I found really quite interesting, and this was published in the Nutrients Journal, where they were showing that supplementation of 150 milligrams of ubiquinol daily in quote unquote healthy individuals, that they found that when they gave those folks 150 milligrams of ubiquinol daily over the course of their trial, that this helped to relieve mild fatigue. So, how many people experience that on a daily basis? We're like, oh, I just don't seem like I have the energy today. Well, maybe you're lacking a little bit of cell energy production capability because maybe your CoQ10 levels aren't where they need to be. And we see this time and time again. As we get older, by the time people hit 40 years old, definitely those CoQ10 levels can start to diminish. And then, like I said, we can complicate things by having chronic disease states. We know diabetics generally are always going to have a tendency to have low coenzyme Q10 levels. It's one of those things where I just really wish more doctors would assess patients' blood levels of coenzyme Q10 because it can make a huge difference, especially in all of these different chronic disease states. If you know that your CoQ10 level is suboptimal and you start to take coenzyme Q10 in that ubiquinol form, it can be so like life changing in terms of the way everything is working. So remember, everything in the body is requiring energy production to some degree. So we think about muscle health, brain health, heart health, kidney health, all of these different things that we know we need to be able to create energy. So CoQ10 can be your helping hand in doing that. Now ours, we actually include in it NADH, which is actually a substrate of vitamin B3, which is niacin. And one of the things that we know about niacin is it's very targeted towards even maintaining healthy cholesterol, which is very important when we think about the whole gamut of cardiovascular health. But we also know that when we're using NADH and we combine that up with the ubiquinol, it helps that ubiquinol almost recycle itself in the cell. So it's like you're getting more bang for your buck when we have the NADH because the cell itself is saying, okay, great, I need that ubiquinol, but now we're kind of supercharging it by having the NADH in conjunction. So many different utilizations. There's study after study showing the impact, but the biggest question that usually comes my way is what in the world is the difference between CoQ10 and ubiquinol? And I always say, well, CoQ10 is ubiquinol. So we have to keep that in mind. We have coenzyme Q10, And there are two different types. We have ubiquinone and we have ubiquinol. And we know that the ubiquinol is already in that reduced antioxidant state. And that's the state that we want it to be because the body starts with ubiquinone and then it will naturally convert into ubiquinol. But when we're taking it as a supplement, ideally we want to be using the direct ubiquinol. So just to clear up any confusion, because sometimes people do get confused by that, because you hear the term thrown around CoQ10 and then you hear ubiquinol. It's like, well, what is the difference? It's the same thing. So just always keep that in mind. But I definitely encourage you to go to our website, invitehealth.com. You can check out our ubiquinol coenzyme Q10 formulations. And I definitely encourage you that if you do have an underlying chronic disease state, whether that's diabetes, whether if you have heart disease, or if you are on a medication that could potentially lower your coenzyme Q10 levels, is to have your CoQ10 level tested. It's a simple blood test, but it can tell you so much. And then am I taking enough ubiquinol on a daily basis? Do I need to add more? Is the amount that I'm taking keeping me in a healthy range? This is all very important. So always keep that in mind. Check out our ubiquinol on our website, and I will be back with you guys in a few more days to talk about more wonderful formulations from Invite Health. Thank you so much.